My daughter threw a retirement party for her boss last spring and invited 47 people. She did not invite me. When I asked her why, she said, "Dad, these are professionals. You'd feel out of place." On the day of the party, I walked through the front doors of the venue, stepped up to the bar, and ordered a drink, because I own the building. The call came on a Saturday morning in March, while I was pressure washing my driveway in Tucson. I had my old work jeans on, the ones with the paint stain on the left knee that no amount of washing ever fully removed, and I heard my phone buzzing against the patio table. I turned off the washer, pulled off one glove, picked it up. "Dad." My daughter's voice was bright in that particular way, the way she got when she had news she had rehearsed. She told me she was planning a retirement party for her boss, a man named Clifton Baird, who had led her marketing firm for 30 years. Big event. Cocktail hour, dinner, a live band. She had found the perfect venue, she said, the terrace at Sonoran Peak. Do you know it? It's gorgeous, Dad. They have this outdoor pavilion with string lights and a view of the mountains. We're expecting close to 50 people. I know the place, I said. She kept talking, barely pausing. She needed my help pulling together a gift, she said. Something meaningful, something that showed real appreciation for a man who had given so much of himself. She was thinking a weekend at a high-end resort, maybe Sedona, maybe Scottsdale. The team was contributing, but she wanted to do something extra from her personally. She mentioned a number, $1,500. Her voice carried that same rehearsed brightness, the expectation underneath it like a wire pulled tight. "That's a big gift for a boss," I said. "He's been more like a mentor, Dad. He's the reason I have the career I have. He deserves it." I told her I'd help. I transferred the money 2 days later. She texted a thank you, a short one, 3 sentences, then nothing else about the party, no date confirmation, no mention of plus ones or attire. I told myself she was busy. I told myself I was reading too much into it. 3 weeks before the party, my neighbor Teddy mentioned it while we were both getting our mail. His wife worked in my daughter's building, something in accounting. He said, "So your daughter's putting together quite a send-off for old Clifton." Teddy's wife had gotten her invitation Tuesday. Engraved card, very elegant. I said, "She's been working hard on it." I walked back inside and stood in my kitchen for a minute. Then I called my daughter. "Hey," I said, "just making sure I've got the right date circled. The party's the 14th, right?" A pause. Short, but I caught it. "Yeah, Dad, the 14th. What time should I be there?" Another pause, longer this time. "Dad, about that." She exhaled slowly. "I've been meaning to talk to you. These are all work people. Clifton's colleagues, clients, people from the industry. It's a networking situation more than a party, really. You'd honestly be kind of bored. It's not your scene." "What scene is that?" She didn't answer that directly. She said, "Look, I love you. But these are executives, brand directors, agency partners. They talk about campaigns and quarterly targets and industry stuff. It's just not. It wouldn't be fun for you." She said she'd come by the following weekend. We'd have lunch. She'd tell me all about it. I said, "That sounds fine, sweetheart. Have a great party." I hung up and stood there in the kitchen where I had eaten breakfast every morning for the past 11 years. Same house I'd bought when I moved to Tucson after her mother passed. Small place, single story, nothing fancy. I drove a 10-year-old Silverado and wore shirts I bought at Costco, and I genuinely liked pressure washing my driveway on Saturday mornings. That was true. All of it was true. What was also true? I had owned the terrace at Sonoran Peak for 7 years. I bought it as part of a portfolio acquisition in 2017, 2 years after I stepped away from the company I had built over 35 years, Southwest Cornerstone Properties. We started with a single strip mall in Albuquerque when my wife June and I were in our early 30s, scratching together every dollar we had after I'd spent a decade doing commercial HVAC installation. We understood buildings. We understood what made them hold value and what made them bleed money. We bought distressed properties, fixed what needed fixing, held what was worth holding. By the time our daughter was in college, we owned 12 properties across Arizona and New Mexico. By the time she graduated, the number was closer to 30. June insisted we live normally, not cheaply. She wasn't talking about deprivation. She meant without performance. We drove ordinary cars. We lived in an ordinary house. We sent our daughter to a good state school, not because we couldn't afford otherwise, but because June believed that a person who grew up surrounded by real money and real work would understand both. We wanted her to earn her own way. We wanted her to know what it felt like to need something and work for it. After June died, I kept the same life, mostly out of habit. Partly because I couldn't see the point in changing, I sold the company in stages, retained a few properties that had sentimental value or strong returns. The terrace at Sonoran Peak was one of them. I'd bought it partly because June and I had celebrated our anniversary there once, years before I had any stake in it, and I liked the idea of owning something connected to a good memory. My daughter didn't know any of this. She knew I had worked in commercial real estate and that I'd sold the business. She didn't know what the business had been worth. She didn't ask. After June died, we went through a quiet period, the two of us, where conversations stayed on the surface. She was grieving. I was grieving. We talked about safe things. When she started at the marketing firm, when she got promotions, when she started dating the man she would eventually marry, I cheered for her and kept the rest of myself private. It was easier than explaining. It was easier than watching her recalibrate the way people do when they find out the numbers. I had not expected her to recalibrate in this direction. I called my attorney the morning after her party call. Nolan Fitch had handled my affairs for 20 years, a quiet man with an office in downtown Phoenix who spoke slowly and billed precisely. I told him everything. He didn't react the way I expected. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, in that even voice of his, "She doesn't know you own the event space. No, and she told you the party isn't your scene. That's what she said." Another pause. Then, "What do you want to do?" "I want to go to my daughter's party." He didn't argue. He pulled up the lease files, confirmed the event booking was under her firm's name, walked me through what my rights as owner were, which were, as it turned out, essentially unlimited. He called the venue manager that afternoon. Discreetly, "The owner will be attending the event on the 14th. Please ensure appropriate access." The venue manager, a woman named Priya, called me directly the next morning. She was professional, measured, but I could hear the careful way she was choosing words. "Mister," she stopped herself. I had asked Nolan to keep my name out of it until the day. She said, "The owner's representative called yesterday. We'll make sure you're accommodated." I told her I didn't want special accommodations. I wanted to arrive at 6:30, find a seat near the back, and let the evening go where it went. She said, "And if anyone from the event staff asks who you are," I said, "tell them I'm the landlord." She laughed, just slightly, before catching herself. I drove to Phoenix the week before the 14th. I hadn't been to the terrace in 2 years, but the parking lot looked the same. The big saguaros along the edge of the lot, the pink gravel, the low adobe walls. I went through the service entrance, the way I always had, and spent an hour walking the property. The pavilion had been repainted, the string lights were new. Someone on their staff had made good decisions. Priya met me in the hallway outside the main kitchen, a composed woman in her 40s who shook my hand with both of hers. She had worked at the terrace for 4 years without ever meeting me in person. "I apologize," she said. "I didn't know the situation until Mr. Fitch called." I told her there was nothing to apologize for. I told her she was running a beautiful property. She walked me through the layout for the event, 51 guests confirmed. Cocktail hour in the front courtyard, dinner at rounds of 8 in the pavilion, speeches after the main course. A band, a jazz quartet, would play from 9 o'clock until 11. I asked about the seating chart. She pulled it up on her tablet and showed me. My daughter's table was near the center. The guest of honor was at the front. I was not on the chart anywhere. I drove back to Tucson that evening and took out the suit I had last worn to my nephew's wedding 3 years ago. Dark charcoal, well cut, a tie June had given me for our 30th anniversary. I hung it on the back of my closet door and looked at it for a while. My daughter called on the 12th, 2 days before. Breezy, casual, nothing about the party. She asked how I was doing, whether my knee had been bothering me, whether I'd watched the game Sunday. I answered everything naturally. I didn't perform, I just answered. At the end of the call, she said, "Love you, Dad. We'll do lunch soon." I said, looking forward to it. I pulled into the terrace parking lot at 6:20 on the 14th. The lot was already half full. A valet in a white polo moved toward my truck and then slowed slightly, recalibrating, the way people do when they expect a certain kind of vehicle and get a different one. I handed him the keys without ceremony. I stood in the entrance for a moment. Through the archway to the front courtyard, I could see the event in progress, clusters of people in cocktail attire, drinks in hand, the low, warm light of the early evening falling across the gravel and the cacti. A string of Edison bulbs traced the edge of the pavilion roof. It was exactly as pretty as my daughter had said it was. I straightened my tie and walked through. I found a position near the drink station, ordered a sparkling water, and watched. My daughter was across the courtyard, laughing with a group of women about her age, her hand on the arm of a man in his 60s, who I took to be Clifton Baird. She was animated, happy, in her element. I hadn't seen her like that in a while. The image sat in my chest at an odd angle, pride and something heavier at the same time. She didn't see me. The crowd was thick enough, and I stayed near the edge. At 7:15, the event coordinator announced the move into the pavilion for dinner. People filtered through. I followed at the back, found an open seat at a table near the side wall where two men were already sitting, both of them in conversation and barely noticing me when I settled in. The table had no name card for me. I poured myself water from the pitcher and waited. Dinner moved forward. The food was good. I knew the kitchen here, knew the chef they'd brought in 18 months ago, a man who'd come from a restaurant in Scottsdale with a serious reputation. My daughter would not have known that when she chose the venue. She had no reason to. Between the salad course and the entree, Clifton Baird stood to speak. He was a large man, silver-haired, clearly used to rooms. He talked about 30 years in the industry, about the people who had shaped him, about what he hoped he had given back. He mentioned my daughter by name. "She built something here that will outlast me," he said. I watched her face go pink. She pressed her fingers to her lips. I thought of June at that moment, the way she used to describe our daughter when she was small. She said, "That girl is going to run something someday. Just watch." After Clifton finished, my daughter stood. She thanked the room for coming. She thanked Clifton for everything he had modeled. She talked about the firm feeling like a second family. Then she paused, and with the warmth still in her voice, she said, "I want to thank everyone who helped put this together, who contributed, who believed this night deserved to be special." She looked around the room with an expression that was full and genuine. She didn't look in my direction. There was no reason she would. But the man sitting to my left did. He had been glancing at me throughout dinner with a particular puzzled expression of someone trying to place a face. He leaned slightly in my direction and said quietly, "Forgive me, are you the owner?" One of the kitchen staff mentioned, I thought maybe. I said, "I am." His eyebrows went up. He looked at the room, then back at me. "The terrace is yours?" "My family's, yes. 35 years in commercial property. I stepped back from the business a few years ago." He extended his hand. "I'm Graham. I'm with Meridian Capital. We were looking at some properties in the Phoenix corridor last year. I think your portfolio came up in the research." I said my name. His expression shifted just slightly, the way it does when a name lands somewhere in a person's memory. At the adjacent table, a woman had turned at the sound of my name, then another. Across the room, I saw a man in his 50s lift his head and look in my direction with open recognition. He had been at a commercial real estate conference in Scottsdale 6 years ago where I had spoken on a panel. I gave him a small nod. My daughter was still at the front of the room, finishing her remarks. She turned, began to make her way back to her table, and that was when her eyes found me. She stopped, not dramatically, not the way it happens in movies. She just stopped walking. Her hand was still raised from gesturing at something. Her face went very still. I stayed where I was. She crossed the room slowly. People around her continued their conversations. The jazz quartet was tuning up near the side stage. The event moved on around us. She stopped in front of me and looked at me in my charcoal suit and June's tie, and she said, her voice barely above the ambient noise, "Dad, how are you? How did you?" "This is my building, sweetheart." She blinked. "The terrace. I've owned it since 2017. I said it quietly, without performance. I didn't say it for the room. I said it for her. Her face moved through several expressions in fast succession. Confusion, then recalculation, then something that looked like the first stages of a person understanding that what they thought they knew is not what they knew at all. "Dad, you didn't know." "I understand that." She exhaled. She looked down at the table, at my water glass, at the centerpiece she had chosen, the simple arrangement of succulents in terracotta pots. Then she looked back at me. I thought this was out of your..." She stopped herself. "Out of my what?" I asked. Not unkindly, just asking. The man from Meridian Capital had moved away, giving us distance, but 2 tables over I could see Clifton Baird watching us with quiet curiosity. I said, "Your mother and I ate our anniversary dinner in this courtyard once. 1994, I think. You were 11. Grandma had you for the weekend. It wasn't a fancy place back then, nothing like now. But June loved the way the mountains looked from the patio at dusk. When the property came available, I bought it. My daughter's eyes were bright now. She was holding herself together, but just barely. Why didn't you ever tell me?" she asked. I didn't answer that directly. I said, "You told me I'd be out of place here, that it wasn't my scene." She flinched slightly. I continued, "I drove HVAC trucks for a decade before I ever bought my first property. Your mother cleaned offices on weekends the year we started the business so we'd have cash flow through the slow months. I've never been out of place anywhere that requires hard work and decent values. Dad," her voice broke slightly on the word. "I'm not angry," I said, because by then I mostly wasn't. What I was tired. Tired of being categorized. Tired of being quietly set aside by the one person I had expected to know me. But anger has a short shelf life for me. It always has. June used to say that was one of my better qualities. I said, "Let's get through your party. This is Clifton's night. Go be where you're supposed to be. We can talk after." She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. She went back to her table. I watched her sit down, watched her say something to the colleague beside her, watched her straighten her posture and pick up her water glass. She was composed. She had always been composed, that she had inherited from her mother. The jazz quartet played well. I finished my dinner and had a brief conversation with Clifton Baird when he made his way around the room. He was the kind of person who looked you in the eye and meant it. I told him my daughter had done a fine job putting the event together. He said he knew. He said she was one of the most capable people he'd worked with, and that whoever led the firm next would be lucky to inherit what she'd built. I believed him. At 9:45, the party was winding down. I found Priya near the entrance, thanked her for the evening, told her the kitchen had been excellent. She shook my hand again and said quietly, "I hope it went the way you needed it to." I said I thought it had. My daughter caught me in the parking lot as I was waiting for the valet. "Dad." She was still in her heels, her jacket over her arm, the June warmth gone from the air now that the sun had been down for hours. Tucson nights drop fast in spring, even warm ones. She said, "I need to say something. Go ahead." I was embarrassed, she said. "Not of you. I want to be clear about that. I was embarrassed that I didn't have a father who would fit in with these people, and that's so much worse, isn't it? Being embarrassed about being embarrassed." I didn't say anything. I let her talk. She said, "I've been doing that thing, where I look at you and I see the truck and the jeans and the house, and I think I know what that adds up to." She stopped. "You never corrected me." "No, why not?" "I wanted to know who you were when you thought you knew who I was." She was quiet for a moment. The valet appeared with my Silverado, and I gave him a folded bill and thanked him. I walked to the driver's side door and turned back to her. "Come to Tucson this weekend," I said. "Bring your husband. I'll make dinner. I'll show you some things, some files, some history, some photographs of your mother you probably haven't seen in a long time. We can start over with the full picture." She pressed her fingers to her eyes briefly. Then she nodded. She came Saturday. She brought her husband, a quiet, steady man named Paul, who had always treated me well, and I thought again that she had made a good choice there, even if he didn't know it yet. I made pot roast, June's recipe, the one that takes all afternoon. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd eaten alone for 11 years, and I opened a box I had never shown her. Photographs, documents, the deed to the first property, a strip mall on Central Avenue in Albuquerque, dated 1988, the loan papers from the bank that had believed in us, the sales contract from the company acquisition in 2015, pages and pages of a life built from the ground up, room by room, building by building, year by year. She sat across from me and went through it slowly. She didn't rush. Paul sat beside her and didn't speak much, but he read what she put in front of him, and his expression was something I hadn't seen before, a recognition that the man at the head of the table was not the man he had assumed. "Mom knew all of this?" my daughter said at some point. She was looking at a photograph of June and me at the groundbreaking for our first major office complex. June had her hard hat on sideways, laughing at something off camera, every bit of it, I said. She built it alongside me. She touched the edge of the photograph. She said, she never said. That was who she was. She didn't think any of it made her more interesting. She thought what made her interesting was how she treated people. My daughter looked up at me. I said, "That's what I've been trying to figure out, whether you learned." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I don't think I had, but I want to." We did the dishes together after dinner, the three of us, the way I remembered doing them with June when our daughter was small and the house was fuller, standing shoulder to shoulder at the kitchen sink in the ordinary way that real life actually happens, not in grand gestures, not in public reveals, just in the accumulated weight of ordinary days. She calls more now, not performatively, not the short surface calls of someone managing an obligation. Real calls. She asks questions. She has started telling me things about her work, real things, the frustrations and the satisfactions and the small victories she used to keep to herself. Last month, she called on a Tuesday evening when I was doing exactly what I was doing the day she called about the party, pressure washing the driveway. I turned off the washer and answered, and she said, "I've been thinking about what you said, about figuring out who I was when I thought I knew who you were." I said, "And I think I've been doing that with everybody," she said, "looking at people and deciding what they add up to before I actually know them." She paused. "I don't want to be that person anymore." I told her I didn't think she was, fundamentally. I told her that the fact that she was sitting with that question meant she was already becoming someone different. She said, "Mom would know what to say here." I said, "She'd say you already know. You just have to stop pretending you don't." There was a long pause, and then she laughed. A real one, slightly watery, the kind that sounds like it comes from the chest. It sounded like her mother. I picked up the pressure washer and finished the driveway after we hung up. The late afternoon sun was low and orange over the Catalinas, the kind of light June used to stop whatever she was doing to look at. I stood there for a minute and looked at it myself. Some lessons take a long time to land. Some people need to see the full picture before they can stop filling in the parts they're missing. That's not a flaw, exactly. It's just being human. What matters is what you do once the picture is complete. My daughter is still figuring out what to do. So am I. We're figuring it out together, which is the only way it was ever going to work.